Think Saturday mornings were safe? Think again. Just when 1970s kids thought they knew their cartoon universes, TV execs smashed worlds together in ways that left jaws on the shag carpet and brains spinning like a Hanna-Barbera chase scene. Did you ever watch Fred Flintstone high-five a superhero, or Scooby-Doo outwit villains with Batman by his side? Which crossover scrambled your sense of reality most? Buckle up, because some of these mashups were so wild, they still have us questioning what we really saw. Let's dive in and get our minds blown all over again. The Flintstones meet the Thing. If you thought Bedrock couldn't get any weirder, you clearly weren't parked in front of the TV in 1979. Because that's when the Fred and Barney Meet the Thing hour bulldozed onto NBC, forever blurring the line between prehistoric slapstick and Marvel Comics mayhem. Let's set the scene. Fred and Barney, your classic lovable cavemen, are trading jokes, Bronto burgers in hand, when suddenly the screen whiplashes into a story about Ben Grimm, the orange, muscle-bound hero from the Fantastic Four. No transition, no logic, just pure Saturday morning chaos. And here's the kicker. The two halves of the show didn't even share scenes together. The Thing's segment followed Fred and Barney's, meaning millions of young viewers expected some wild prehistoric superhero showdown, but got two parallel universes crammed into one baffling hour instead. Still, the mind-bending implication was clear. If Bedrock and the Marvel Universe could coexist in the same block of TV time, anything was possible. Kids who just wanted to see dino cars and stone houses suddenly found themselves grappling with cosmic rays, rock-punching action, and a Thing who transformed by clanking his magic rings and shouting, "Thing ring, do your thing." Parents walking past the tube probably thought the kids were channel surfing, but nope, this was just what passed for coherent programming in the late 70s. But why did this happen? The answer is simple: ratings desperation. Saturday mornings had become an all-out ratings war, and network execs were swinging for the fences with mashups, hoping lightning would strike. While the crossover failed to deliver an actual face-to-face meeting, it succeeded in burning itself into the pop culture memory. Decades later, people still debate whether it was genius, nonsense, or both. So was it satisfying? Well, if you tuned in expecting Fred to yabba-dabba-doo his way through a Marvel showdown, you were left wanting. But if you liked your childhood entertainment with a side of whiplash, this was the kind of television that made you spit out your cereal and ask your friends, "Did that really just happen?" Welcome to the glorious weirdness of 70s cartoon crossovers. Scooby-Doo meets Batman and Robin. If there's one crossover that sent shockwaves through playground gossip and left a generation with whiplash, it was when Scooby-Doo and the gang teamed up with Batman and Robin. Yes, you heard that right. In 1972, the dynamic Scooby-Doo affair aired, and suddenly Shaggy was riding shotgun in the Batmobile. Daphne was hanging with the boy wonder, and Scooby was nervously sharing snacks with the world's greatest detective. This was no mere gimmick. It was a full-on, plot-driven team-up that forced the caped crusaders of Gotham to operate by Scooby logic. The bad guys? The Joker and the Penguin, naturally. But forget your dark and gritty Batman, this was Adam West-era cheese, complete with zoinks and jinkies echoing around the Batcave. The animation was clunky, the plot full of secret passageways and rubber masks. But for kids, the excitement was nuclear. Let's talk about the impact. For kids used to seeing Batman brood in the dark and Scooby bumble through haunted mansions, the sudden mashup was like peanut butter meeting pickles, wrong on paper, but weirdly irresistible. Suddenly, crime fighting wasn't just about gadgets or gags. It was both. Robin trading clues with Velma, the Bat Signal sharing a scene with Scooby snacks. This was the stuff Saturday mornings were made for. Or, depending on your view, the stuff of fever dreams. Behind the scenes, this was all about synergy. Hanna-Barbera owned the rights to both shows, so why not double the fun and the merch sales? The experiment was such a hit, they brought Batman and Robin back for a second crossover, cementing the format as a new template for cartoon success. But here's the real punchline. For 70s kids, these episodes rewrote the rules of what could happen on television. It wasn't just about catching ghosts or fighting crime anymore. Anything, literally anything, could go down on Saturday morning TV. And for the generation that watched these icons join forces, it felt like the universe was expanding, one absurd team-up at a time. For better or worse, the cartoon crossover craze was here to stay. The new ScoobyDoo Movies guest star Palooza. Sometimes a crossover isn't just a one-off stunt, it's an entire business model. Case in point, the new ScoobyDoo movies. If the original Scooby-Doo formula wasn't zany enough for you, Hanna-Barbera hit the gas in 1972 by blowing up the guest list. Forget haunted fairgrounds. Now every week, the gang stumbled into A-listers, B-listers, and downright random pop culture cameos. And the result? A fever dream lineup that left 70s kids dazed and a little starstruck. Let's set the scene. The Mystery Machine rolls up, fog machines working overtime, and out pops Don Knotts, the Harlem Globetrotters, Phyllis Diller, acting wackier than Shaggy ever did on a sugar rush. Suddenly, Scooby-Doo wasn't just a cartoon, it was a weekly who's who of the TV universe. These weren't just subtle nods, these guest stars took center stage, swapping punchlines and clues as if it was the most natural thing in the world for cartoon teens to be on a first-name basis with Sonny and Cher. For 1970s kids, every episode became a new event, a TV lottery where you never knew who might appear. Was it weird to see Laurel and Hardy bumble through a mystery with Daphne and Velma? Of course. Was it strange when the Addams Family brought their gothic weirdness into Scooby's already creepy world? Absolutely. But it worked, mainly because the show never pretended any of it made sense. The message was simple. Saturday mornings had no rules except the weirder, the better. And let's be honest, the crossovers weren't always seamless. The animation was recycled, the dialogue sometimes forced, but kids didn't care. For an entire generation, it felt like every world could collide, every star could guest, and the only limit was how fast Hanna-Barbera could draw them. So, was it genius or chaos? Why not both? The new Scooby-Doo movies proved that cartoon universes were made to be mashed up and set the gold standard for weird, wonderful, and totally unpredictable Saturday mornings. And if you're still waiting for a Scooby episode with your favorite celebrity, you've only got 70s TV to thank for opening those cartoon doors. Yogis Arklark, the first cartoon super crossover. Long before superhero movies gave us shared universes, Hanna-Barbera was already throwing every character they had onto a single absurd adventure. Enter Yogis Arklark, the 1972 TV special that did for cartoons what the Avengers did for comic books, except with a whole lot more animal hijinks and a suspiciously environmental message. If you were a 70s kid, this was the moment your favorite cartoons stopped living in separate boxes and started bickering on the same flying arc. Imagine this: Yogi Bear, Quick Draw McGraw, Huckleberry Hound, Snagglepuss, and what felt like 100 other Hanna-Barbera legends, all climbing aboard a high-tech ark, piloted by animals, powered by hope, and held together by the thinnest of Saturday morning logic. The goal? To find the perfect place, a utopia free of pollution and bad vibes, because even cartoon bears were worried about acid rain in the 70s. It was noisy, chaotic, and packed with more one-liners than you could shake a picnic basket at. Arguments erupted over directions, moral lessons were delivered with the subtlety of a mallet, and every few minutes another familiar face poked out to deliver a punchline. For kids used to seeing these characters in their own private worlds, it was mind-blowing, a cross-dimensional reunion that made you wonder what other secrets the cartoon multiverse was hiding. But what really made Yogis Arklark unforgettable wasn't just the parade of cameos. It was the sense that anything could happen when universes collided. Plot coherence? Optional. The real thrill was seeing Huckleberry Hound argue with Top Cat or Magilla Gorilla get bossed around by Yogi. This was chaos theory, animated. The impact was huge. Yogis Arklark spawned the long-running Yogi's Gang series, cementing the crossover format as a Hanna-Barbera staple. It was messy, it was noisy, but it was proof positive that sometimes more is more, especially when it comes to cartoon crossovers. And if you never looked at your favorite characters the same way again, you can blame the day they all decided to share a boat. The Addams Family meets Scooby-Doo. If you ever wanted proof that TV executives were just rolling dice and hoping for gold, look no further than the day the Addams Family pulled up alongside the Mystery Machine. In a 1972 episode of the new Scooby-Doo movies, the famously macabre clan, Morticia, Gomez, Lurch, the whole grimly lovable gang, invited Scooby, Shaggy, and the crew into their gothic mansion. For kids who were already a little spooked by both shows, this was like double-dipping in a cauldron of creepiness. Let's get specific. The episode opens with the gang running out of gas, classic, and seeking help from a mysterious mansion down the road. Inside, the Adamses being their usual delightfully deadpan selves. Morticia offering snacks, Lurch's growl echoing down the halls, Wednesday and Pugsley setting off traps in the foyer. Meanwhile, Shaggy and Scooby are losing their minds, convinced that every shadow hides a ghost, while Gomez is trying to sign them up as housekeepers. The writers didn't hold back on the crossover jokes. References to monsters, mystery solving, and a healthy respect for the absurd were flying fast and furious. But the genius here wasn't just in mashing up two worlds. It was how the episode reveled in the contrast. The Addams family treated every ghoul and ghost as a minor inconvenience, while Scooby and the gang were running for their cartoon lives. It was a perfect storm of culture clash, with each side playing their part to the hilt. Kids didn't know whether to laugh, hide, or just marvel that such different worlds could collide in the first place. And as always, it ended with the mystery solved, the villain unmasked, and everyone sharing a snack, because that's how every good cartoon should wrap up. But the real legacy, for the kids who watched, it expanded what was possible on TV. Suddenly, the walls between worlds felt paper thin, and anyone or anything could show up next. So if you ever find yourself wishing TV was weirder, just remember, the Addamses and the Scooby Gang did it first, and they did it in style. Fred and Barney meet the Schmoo. Just when you thought Bedrock had hit peak weirdness, along came the Schmoo, a smiling, shape-shifting blob straight out of the comic strip Lil Abner. In 1979, Fred and Barney Meet the Schmoo hit the airwaves, and kids across America blinked in disbelief. Who okayed this? Who thought the world of stone wheels and dinosaurs needed a white jelly bean with googly eyes and supernatural powers? Only in the 1970s could a cartoon pitch meeting end with, "What if we toss in a sentient pile of Play-Doh?" Here's how the madness unfolded. The Schmoo, a creature who could morph into any object and whose only goal in life was to help others, or occasionally dissolve into puddles of pure anxiety, somehow became Fred and Barney's new best friend. While Wilma and Betty rolled with it, viewers weren't so sure. Watching the Schmoo bounce through the streets of Bedrock, helping with chores one moment and hiding from villains the next, was a masterclass in cartoon whiplash. Was this still a Stone Age sitcom, or had we wandered into a surrealist fever dream? And let's not gloss over the real kicker. The show would bounce from Bedrock to segments featuring Schmoo in the modern day, solving mysteries with a trio of teens. Suddenly, viewers were pinballing between ancient and modern times, between the familiar and the utterly bizarre. Hanna-Barbera was banking on pure, unfiltered variety, and for better or worse, that's exactly what they delivered. So what did it all mean? For some, the Schmoo was lovable, a sort of animated comfort food. For others, he was the cartoon equivalent of a jump scare, cute one second, uncanny the next. But no matter how you felt, you couldn't ignore him. This crossover wasn't just a collision of worlds, it was a collision of logic itself. And if you grew up with it, you probably still see Schmoos hiding in clouds or mashed potatoes to this day. That's the power of the weirdest kind of TV magic. Josie and the Pussycats in outer space with the teen angels. If you think crossovers only happen on Earth, think again. In 1972, Hanna-Barbera decided that Josie and the Pussycats, the grooviest, most leopard print-wearing band in cartoon history, should rocket off into space. But instead of just battling cosmic baddies solo, Josie and her band found themselves crossing paths with Hanna-Barbera's newest girl power trio, the Teen Angels from Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels. The result? A cosmic mashup so delightfully over the top, it made kids wonder if the studio animators had swapped their coffee for something much stronger. The premise was classic 70s bonkers. Josie's band, lost in space, stumbling onto alien planets, running from bug-eyed monsters, and occasionally solving mysteries with help from other wandering girl detectives. The Teen Angels, hot off their own mystery-solving adventures with a prehistoric caveman, landed smack dab in the middle of Josie's interstellar chaos. Picture it, laser beams, jet boots, guitars that doubled as alien blasters, and a lot of nervous glances between cartoon cats and intergalactic teens. What made this crossover unforgettable was its gleeful disregard for boundaries, genre, logic, or otherwise. Musical numbers in zero gravity? Check. Space villains who could have come from either show? Double check. Sidekick animals running interference while everyone else swapped fashion tips? Absolutely. The cross-pollination was so thorough, some kids spent years thinking Josie and the Pussycats always had cosmic adventures. Did it all make sense? Not even close. But that was the beauty of it. Hanna-Barbera knew their audience. Kids who didn't need an excuse for worlds to collide as long as it was fun, fast, and full of catchy tunes. The legacy? Josie's cosmic era is now a cult favorite, and crossovers like this one laid the groundwork for decades of anything goes cartoon logic. In the end, if your only complaint was, that didn't make any sense, you were probably watching with the wrong part of your brain. The rest of us, we just grabbed our popcorn and enjoyed the ride. ScoobyDoo meets the Three Stooges. If you want the clearest snapshot of how off-the-wall 1970s cartoons could get, look no further than the time Scooby-Doo and friends teamed up with the slapstick kings themselves, the Three Stooges. Yes, in a world where ghosts get unmasked by teens and talking Great Danes, apparently all that was missing was a little nuke, 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 and a few well-placed pies to the face. Hanna-Barbera, never content with just one layer of chaos, dropped Moe, Larry, and Curly right into the heart of mystery-solving madness. How did it happen? In the new ScoobyDoo Movies, the gang stumbles upon a rundown amusement park, classic Scooby setup, only to find the Stooges running the place. And when strange happenings threaten to shut the park down, it's all hands on deck. Velma working out clues, Shaggy running from ghosts, and the Stooges doing what they do best, turning every scene into a three-ring circus of bonks, slaps, and pratfalls. Watching Scooby try to keep up with the Stooges' physical comedy is like watching a giraffe join a juggling act. It's messy, hilarious, and somehow it just works. But let's be honest, this wasn't just comedy, it was a time machine. The Three Stooges were legends from another era, and for millions of kids, this was their first exposure to the trio's old-school antics. The show didn't care about canon or consistency. It was about throwing together everything that made kids laugh, then cranking the volume to 11. The result? An episode so energetic, even the animation looked like it was struggling to keep up. What did it all mean for TV? It showed that Saturday morning cartoons were now the Wild West of television, where nothing was off limits and every pairing was on the table. For fans, it meant more laughs, more surprises, and a brand new appreciation for classic comedy, delivered with a side of cartoon ghosts. And if you've ever seen Scooby try to dodge a pie in midair, you know exactly why this crossover is still talked about decades later. The Jetsons meet the Flintstones. If there was ever a crossover that played chicken with the very fabric of space and time, it was the moment the Flintstones and the Jetsons, prehistory's favorite family and the ultimate vision of the future, shared the screen, even if just for a few heart-stopping promo spots in the late 70s. Forget physics, forget logic. This was cartoon marketing alchemy. Before the full-length TV movie in the 1980s, network execs couldn't resist teasing kids with commercials and animated bumpers where Bedrock's Brontosaurus cranes met Orbit City's flying cars, and Fred Flintstone and George Jetson stared each other down across eons. Picture it. Fred, brow furrowed, gawking at George's anti-gravity breakfast machine. George, terrified, trying to work a dinosaur garbage disposal. In these fleeting crossovers, every joke landed like an asteroid. Dinosaurs versus robots, stone wheels versus jetpacks, clubs versus conveyor belts. For a kid sprawled on the living room rug, these moments were pure TV sorcery. Two universes colliding, and for a second, anything was possible. Why did these teasers hit so hard? Because they were forbidden fruit. Just a taste, never a full episode. It kept kids' imaginations buzzing. What would happen if Pebbles met Elroy? Would Astro chase Dino? It was a mystery left unsolved until 1987. But by then, these snippets had already baked themselves into the DNA of cartoon culture. In truth, these network stunts were a masterclass in hype. Hanna-Barbera knew the power of dangling the impossible right in front of your face. They turned their two biggest hits into one shared universe, even if only for 30 seconds at a time. For a whole generation, those little crossover ads were enough to launch 1,000 playground debates and kept us all begging for a full episode. And in that sense, they may have been the greatest crossover of them all. All promise, no payoff, just endless fuel for our Saturday morning imaginations. Speed Buggy and Josie's band. Some cartoon crossovers make sense. Others, They're so wild, you wonder if the animators just drew names out of a hat. Enter Speed Buggy rolling up on Josie and the Pussycats. Yes, the talking dune buggy with a voice like Goober and a laugh like a hiccup, joining forces with the most glam rock band in the universe. This wasn't some fever dream. It actually happened in the 1973 episode Speed Buggy's Daring Escapade, and 70s kids who witnessed it still aren't sure what hit them. The premise: Josie and her all-girl band, complete with their own feline mascot, find themselves at a racetrack, chasing clues and dodging bad guys, when Speed Buggy and his teenage crew burst onto the scene. Suddenly, you've got a mystery-solving double act, one powered by guitars and glitter, the other by horsepower and, well, a lot of automotive puns. Watching Speed Buggy interact with Josie and friends was like oil meeting water, at first, anyway. The show reveled in the contrast, Melody fawning over the sentient car, Alexander trying to race Speed Buggy and losing by a mile, and Valerie outsmarting both sets of villains before the final musical number. It was pure Hanna-Barbera, slapstick, hijinks, and a total disregard for why any of it made sense. But here's the kicker. These kinds of crossovers created a sense of a connected cartoon universe. Suddenly, kids started asking, could Scooby-Doo meet Josie? What about Captain Caveman? It was a new kind of TV logic, where anything could happen as long as the animation department could pencil it in before lunch. So was it weird? Unquestionably. But it was also a taste of the limitless possibilities cartoons could offer. In the end, Speed Buggy and Josie proved that you didn't need a good reason for a crossover, just an engine, a riff, and a wild sense of fun. And if you grew up watching, you learned early on, expect the unexpected. The Banana Splits Adventure Hour meets the Arabian Nights. Sometimes, a cartoon crossover wasn't just a guest spot, it was a whole variety show built on smashing genres together until something new and vaguely psychedelic oozed out. Enter the Banana Splits Adventure Hour, the late 60s, early 70s hybrid that was equal parts animal rock band, live-action madness, and animated anthology. But among all the show's bonkers ingredients, nothing turned heads faster than the animated crossovers between the Banana Splits themselves and the daring, magic-powered team known as the Arabian Nights. The Banana Splits, Fleagle, Bingo, Drooper, and Snorky weren't your average band. Imagine if the Beatles had traded mop tops for mascot suits and decided to film their TV show in an abandoned funhouse. Now, add a side dish of animated action. In certain episodes, the Splits would introduce, or in the wildest segments, briefly interact with, the swashbuckling Arabian Nights, Sultan Princes, acrobats, magicians, and a shape-shifting superhero horse. The tonal shift was whiplash-inducing. 1 minute you're listening to Tra-La-La Song, the next you're dodging evil caliphs and magic daggers. What made this crossover so unforgettable was the sheer unpredictability. You never knew what was coming. Puppet slapstick, sword fights, a band of furries jamming with a genie. For kids in the 70s, it was like the Variety Hour had decided cartoons could and should do everything at once. Sure, the transitions were sometimes jarring, like switching from bubblegum pop to wild Arabian adventure at the flip of a channel, but that only added to the surreal charm. If you were a kid with a short attention span, this was your paradise. You could go from a chase scene to a dance number to a flying carpet escape without ever leaving your seat. The Banana Splits mishmash of segments helped pioneer the variety show crossover, showing that cartoons didn't have to stay in their lane. The result? A messy, musical, magical jumble that stuck in the brain like confetti in shag carpeting. And for those who remember, it's still the wildest hour TV ever tried to squeeze into a Saturday morning. Dynamut teams up with Blue Falcon and Scooby-Doo? When cartoon dogs go meta, you get something like the Scooby-Doo Dynamut Hour, an event so perfectly chaotically 1970s that it still has fans debating whether it was brilliant, bizarre, or both. Dynamut, the mechanical dog wonder, was already a send-up of superhero sidekicks, a robotic mutt with more gadgets than sense, perpetually wrecking Blue Falcon's crime-fighting plans. But in 1976, Hanna-Barbera decided to truly let the worlds collide. Enter Mystery Inc., stage left. For fans of both shows, this crossover was a Saturday morning game changer. One episode in particular, The Great Brain Train Robbery, has the mystery machine rolling into Big City, where Scooby and Dynamut finally share a screen. If you thought one bumbling dog detective was enough, try two. Shaggy and Blue Falcon try to keep a lid on things while the two canines chase bad guys, trip over each other, and accidentally solve the case in the goofiest way possible. It's easy to forget how weird this was. Blue Falcon, a straight-laced Batman-light hero, suddenly has to deal with not only his own malfunctioning mutt, but also a crew of meddling kids and their talking dog. The dynamic is pure mayhem. Scooby and Dynamut out-clumsying each other, Velma and Falcon trading high-tech jargon, Daphne and Shaggy rolling their eyes as everything falls to pieces. And when the villain is finally unmasked, let's just say no one, not even the scriptwriters, saw it coming. But the real magic was what this crossover signaled for cartoon universes. It meant that any character could pop up at any time in anyone else's world. Barriers between shows evaporated. For 70s kids, it felt like TV had become one big shared backyard, sometimes messy, sometimes nonsensical, always a blast. Looking back, the Scooby-Doo Dynamut Hour was the fever dream prototype for all the crossovers that would follow. If you loved it, you understood the power of cartoon chaos. If you didn't, you were probably just jealous you didn't have your own Robo-Dog. Either way, it was a highlight of crossover madness, a true collision of the canine kind.